Hello everyone, Zelrant here, and with the announcement of Vector coming up next, I think it's time we take a look into her kit, kind of a complete overview of her. I mean, I think everybody knows the main thing that really kind of sets her apart and makes her pretty much future-proof when it comes to burn teams, but there's actually a lot within her kit that makes her really good for burn. And the thing is, we already know, burn team with QJ and Sharkery is already dominating. Vector is going to make that even better. And so with that, let's just go ahead and get right into her kit. Now, the main part that I think everybody knows about Vector, which is kind of one of the things that makes her so good, and I think makes her pretty future-proof in terms of value. It's going to be hard to power creep this without someone just outright having this same exact buff. And that is in her passive. So you have Vector's immune to the negative effects of burn type terrain. That's good. She's not going to get impacted by burn. And then before burning, dealing a burn damage if the target has overburn, which in the burn team, they're almost always, especially if you have like your V3, QJ, and Sharky and all that, they're almost always going to have overburn. It's hard to kind of think a situation where the boss isn't going to have that. You're going to apply overheat combustion to them for 2 turns. Overheat combustion being when they have this effect, all allies within 1 radius gains fixed damage. So it's basically like an AoE. 20% damage of fire if they have overburn, which they pretty much will. And then at the start of battle, increases the attack count of support attacks that deal burn damage by 1. And this is massive. And this is why we were saying when Vector comes out, it's very, very, very like almost 100% chance, which it is now confirmed it's coming. But QJ would be getting her expansion key on the release of Vector, because that's when they got it on CN as well. And that is because QJ's expansion key now makes it so her support actions, instead of doing physical damage, they do burn damage now. And that is extremely important because that is what Vector's passive works with. It basically makes it so QJ can do an additional support action. So if QJ uses her ultimate, which she normally can do 4 support actions, her passive now allows her to do 5. Now, we'll get into it because she can actually increase it to 6 here, but we'll get to that. That's going to be with her dupes. So we have that. That's like the biggest thing that I think everybody knows about her kit and why she's so good. But the last part here, at the start of turn, if Vector's Confectance Index is full, decreases it to 0, and then increases attack by 10%. And this will last to the end of turn. Now, this is pretty huge. Know that none of her skills or ultimate utilize Confectance Index. So for Vector, Confectance Index solely exists for triggering this. So it's a little bit of a damage increase to her, but ultimately in the burn team, Vector's there to make the rest of the team, mainly QJ and Sharkery at this point, do a lot more damage. So that's that. When we go up to her basic, to me, I don't think you're ever going to use it, but it's just your standard basic attack. And the reason I don't think you're ever going to use it is because her 2 skills have a cooldown of 1 turn, and you can alternate between them. Unless you're using her ultimate. So we have our first one here, Final Incineration. This one has stability damage 3, cooldown 1 turn. Selects an enemy target within 7 tile radius, deals burn damage equivalent to 120%. If they have burn debuffs, you're using her on a burn team. They're always going to have burn debuffs. Deals fixed damage equivalent to 50% attack to all enemies within a 3 tile radius. So it's kind of got a little bit of an AoE to it. And then applies overburn for 2 turns. That is going to be a little bit of nicety for those that don't have like a V3 QJ. But I mean, Vector is one of the reasons you really want a V3 QJ, because support actions from QJ at V3 apply overburn, which then can trigger Sharkery. But this is another way you can get it right here with this skill if you really need it. Not really all that useful with the V3 QJ though, since she's already doing it herself. But it's always nice to apply it in different ways. And then Confectance Index increases by 2. So she gets 2 points of Confectance Index, which is nice. You then have her second skill here, Malignant Strike. Stability damage 3, cooldown of 1 turn. So like I said, you're going to alternate between these 2 skills here, back and forth. And then this one, select an enemy target within a 7 tile radius, deals burn damage equivalent to 100% attack, and then applies Firebrand for 2 turns. So, as you can see, it's 2 turns, so you should be able to keep this up on the enemy at all times, because you're going to alternate between the 2. Increases Confectance Index by 2 turns. And then what Firebrand is when the holder receives burn damage, which they're going to be receiving a ton of it, generates Scorched Tiles that last for 2 turns. So you're pretty much going to have Scorched Tiles all over the place, because you're going to be doing this all the time. So that is nice there. And then you have the final one, her ultimate here. And her ultimate, the nice thing is it does come with extra command. So even when her ultimate's up, which it has a 4-turn cooldown, you're still going to be rotating back and forth between these two skills because you will use her ultimate and then go to one of these skills. So what her ultimate is select a tile within a 7-tile radius, and you can kind of see it over here. Deals massive AoE burn damage of 16, or I would say deals AoE burn damage of 60% attack to all enemies, but it's a very large area. Like you can see that I think this is as big as Klukai skill 2's. It looks to be as big as Klukai skill 2 if you're V6. And applies Scorch Tiles. Also, all of that also becomes Scorch Tiles. Lasts for 2 turns. And then applies Fuel of the Fire to all allies for 2 turns. And Fuel of the Fire is just basically giving yourself more damage overall to those team members. Where is it on here? Yeah, right here. When dealing burn damage, increases damage dealt by 10% and deals additional instance of fixed damage equivalent to 20% attack to the target. So just getting massive damage out of QJ and Sharkry and the whole burn team as we get the other ones as well. So her ultimate is amazing. Way more damage to your team from that. And that is her skills there. Just all around, basically makes it where you can do more support actions, all kinds of burn buffs that not only make the enemies take damage from burn in the form of like and a little bit of AoE mixed in there, but then in just straight up increasing the damage your burn units do with their burn attacks. Now we aren't getting Sharkry's key yet, so Sharkry isn't going to be able to take advantage of Vector right this second, but Sharkry does get an expansion key in the future, which makes it where she also does burn damage with her support actions, which is then makes them even more broken. But right now it's just going to be QJ that's really taking advantage of that point. But let's go ahead and take a look now at her dupes. The biggest one that you're going to hear everybody talk about being mandatory, it's not mandatory to get V1. It's just really, really good. One of the best, I'd say the second best dupe in the game if you're going to go for dupes. The first best, I would say, is Springfield's V1. But if you're willing to go deep into 2 units, this is going to be the second one that I would say pretty much anybody should go for, since the burn team is probably the most free-to-play friendly of the teams alongside Hydro. And her V1 is really good for multiple reasons, but the biggest one, and I think the one that stands out the most, is her V1 makes it now where you get an additional 2 support actions for burn type attacks. So now QJ with her ultimate can do 6 support actions. And then when Sharkry gets her expansion key, I think that ups it to 4 or 5 for Sharkry. So you're going to be doing non-stop support actions. And then if we ever get any future, and that's where I think this one is such a good future-proof one, any burn type support actions in the future are going to take advantage of this. And this really opens up some possibilities for other characters to do this. As we've already discussed with Mishti and her converting AoE support actions to corrosion, just imagine if we have a unit that converts AoE or any form of support action to burn in the future. If we have anyone that ever can convert a support action to burn, you can pair them with Vector, and that would be crazy. So definitely one of the best dupes if you're going to go over any in the game here. But this is not the only thing that V1 gets. I mean, that by itself is crazy. But also, I had a little glitch there. But also, V1 has a new effect added for overheat combustion. As we know, overheat combustion is built into here. If they have overburn, applies it. So you're pretty much always going to have overheat combustion on the enemy, especially when you're fighting a boss, which is where it matters the most. Increases burn damage taken by 30%. Fixed damage is dealt to all allies within a 3x3 tile radius of the target. So just massive increase of damage. And when you already look what it was 20. So it's basically a 10% increase right there. So V1 is really nice, and V1 is the good stopping point. To me, I don't see much of a reason to push any farther for those that want that advice. But we can take a look at the rest of the dupes. A lot of what the rest of the dupes are going to do for Vector is increase her own damage. But to me, what Vector's bringing to the burn team is increasing the damage your burn DPS units like QJ and Sharky are doing. So I'm not as concerned as Vector, how much damage Vector does, but her rest of hers does increase her. So let's just look at them real quick. So V2, so takes the Glorious Finale, enhances the effect of Field of the Fire. When dealing burn damage, increases damage by 30%. So it increases her damage there. applies Blazing Assault 2 for 2 turns, and dispels 2 debuffs for all allies. So that one's pretty nice there. I mean, her V2 gives you some more damage with Blazing Assault 2 overall, which is here 15% is increased to attack. So that might be some people's targets. I don't think it's enough to really warrant it, but overall, that is V2. V3, Final Incineration, increases damage percentage of burn and fixed damage by 30%. The target does not need to have burn type debuffs to do fixed damage. I mean, that one doesn't matter to me because you're always pairing, you're always pairing Vector with the burn team. They're always going to have, if you're when it actually matters when you're fighting a boss, they're always going to have a burn buff debuff on them. So that doesn't really matter. Additionally, applies overheat combustion on the target for 2 turns. But then again, this is another one. You're always going to have this, like, overheat combustion on a boss is going to be very, very easy to maintain, so that doesn't do much at all. The big part here is this increase the Confectance Index to 4 points for this skill, which basically makes it when you're alternating between her 2 skills, it's going to be 1 turn less required to trigger this part here. So she's going to have this buff of the 10% increase to damage a little bit more often, basically. So that, I mean, that's the big one with V3. Then you have V4, increases damage percentage by 30% for Malignant Strike. And then a new effect is added for the buff Firebrand. For each burn type debuff held, increases damage taken by 3%. A nice little bit of damage increase for burn debuffs adding. And you're going to be stacking all kinds of them. You're going to have, what, Firebrand, Overheat, Combustion, Overburn. I think you're going to have like 5 or 6 of them. There's a ton of debuffs. So this is going to be like a 15 to 18% damage increase. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how many debuffs there are, but you can get a ton of them on the enemy. So this can really add up here. And then applies overheating for 1 turn, increases Confectance Index by 4 points instead. So another one where it's increasing it by 4, and that's just going to make Vector do even more damage with being able to get into... I think that basically makes it where now you can maintain this buff permanently, I believe. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it basically means you're going to have that 10% damage increase pretty much all the time. And then we have the 5th upgrade. So this is now V5 is another one to her passive. New effect is added for overheat combustion. At the end of action, generates scorch tiles within a 1 tile radius of self. Increases fixed damage dealt to 30% of the caster's attack. I mean, you're going to have scorch tiles already all over the place. I don't know how useful that is. But more damage there. And then at the start of turn, each excess Confectance Index point increases attack by 10% up to a maximum of 20%. And this is going to be important because you're stacking 4 now, so you're going to have an excessive amount coming out quite often there. So you could effectively see this as a 20% buff, because I think you should be able to easily maintain getting 20% at V5. But it's like, this is focusing on Vector's damage herself, so it's nothing too crazy since she's not like your main damage dealer. Then you have V6. New effect added for Fuel of the Fire. When dealing burn damage, increases crit by 15%. For each burn type buff held, increases damage dealt by 5%. So like I'm saying, this is going to... And Fuel of the Fire is this one. When dealing burn damage, increases damage dealt by 10% and dealing additional instance of fixed damage. So that one is going to just increase her damage a good chunk. Like I think at V6 now you're starting to see Vector really actually do noticeable damage. I don't know how well it is in comparison to say Sharky and QJ, because I doubt she gets even close to their damage. But it still helps if you really want to go heavy into having a very strong burn team. And then also Vector gains negative resistance for 2 turns. And negative resistance is just more crit damage. So she can do a lot of crit damage with that. So that is the dupes. Like I'm saying, everything after V1 isn't really necessary. V1 is crazy good. And if you can get it and you want to heavily invest in the burn team, which I think most people do, since it is probably one of the more free-to-play friendly ones, since Sharky is amazing and is an SR. QJ being on the standard banner, and you can use the selector on the standard banner to get multiple copies of her. I'd say V1 is one of the more important ones in the... Unless you're really broke, just get her V0 and then look at getting the V1 on rerun, because who knows when Springfield's coming out. And I would say Springfield, her V1 is actually a higher priority to me in terms of value, but Vector's is right up there alongside Springfield on the dupes. So let's look at these fixed keys now. So we have fixed key 1, Final Incineration. If the skill kills the target, generate Scorch Tiles. I mean, situational. How important are getting those Scorch Tiles going to be? You have so many other ways to generate them. Doesn't seem all that crazy to me, but you may have a value for that at some point. Fixed key 2, at the start of battle, increases Confectant's index by 3 points. That's going to be a no-brainer start one, getting right into giving her damage. But it's still, I mean, she's not my main damage dealer. So if you have other ones that may be better, maybe you don't do that one, because she doesn't need the Confectant's index to do anything. It's just once she maxes it out, she gets a 10% damage buff. But right now, I'd say that's all right. More damage is always good, unless the other fixed keys provide more. Fixed key 3, before using an active attack, it dispels 2 buffs from the target. There we go. That's going to be a nice one to debuff the boss. As we already know, with the current one that we've had multiple times, we had to do that. Now, I don't know how important that's going to be for the new boss, because as we saw in the video, Gunsmoke, we are getting a new boss. Apparently, this boss really wants the burn team. So, yeah, that's going to be huge, but I don't know how important that's going to be when it comes to dispelling buffs. But it's a good one to have when needed. But I believe you already have dispels built in the other kits as well, so it may not be that useful. But it is nice to have that capability if needed. Fixed key 4, when an active attack deals damage against a large target, deals additional instance fixed damage equivalent to 15% attack. When you're fighting a boss, that one seems pretty good on getting some more damage out of her. Fixed key 5, when Vector is on a burn type tile, which when you see how much she can cover the map and burn, I mean, we saw it in the video, this is going to be pretty easy to do. Decreases the damage received by 20% and recovers 2 stability and 10 max HP at the end of turn. Now, this is just kind of a tanky one if you want to make her a little bit tanky. I mean, you don't need her as your tank. You already can use Senia, or if you have Cinerisi as your healer, plenty enough. They're going to be wrecking the map. I don't know if that's going to be as important since you have the capabilities to deal with damage when you get it. And then you have fixed key 6, and this is probably the best one of them all. If Overburn is applied on an enemy with an attack range, something that QJ-V3 does, Sharkery does it, Overburn is like the main debuff of the entire burn kit. So this is going to be happening pretty much every turn if you build a full burn team. Vector undergoes an instance of Y support, so she has her own support action, dealing a burn damage equivalent of 60% attack and 1 stability damage. This effect can be activated once per turn. So now she's doing support actions. This is all the burn team is, and we're going to see that with the next unit as well, with the shotgun. She does support actions as well. So crazy, crazy, crazy. Really, really good there. Infinity Key, attack, HP, crit, plus 3%. Not my favorite on the Affinity Key, but this is, I mean, it's always good to get a little bit more of them if you're working on them. But then you have her Common Key, attack, plus 5% at the start of turn. If there are enemies with burn-type debuffs, increases attack by 8%. This one's going right onto my QJ, because this is an 8% versus 7%. So now it doesn't have crit, but I think this may be better than getting the crit, because I definitely don't want to put this one on Vector. I want to put it on one of my damage dealers. So it's either going on QJ or Sharkery. I'm pretty sure I want to put it on my QJ though, but we'll kind of have to see versus kind of whether crit's more important or attack on the substat versus having that extra percentage here. We'll have to see. I don't think it's going to make much of a difference, so it's most likely going on my QJ regardless. And then the last thing up here was take a look at her weapon, and I think Vector, from all the weapons I've seen in the game, I think if you're one that does pull weapons on certain characters, I think Vector has probably the best limited support gun in the game in terms of everything it provides to its element. So we look at it, Echoes of Sorrow. If the unit has full HP at their start of action, they gain 1 random buff for 1 turn. Just a nice little buff for Vector, nothing too crazy there. But it really comes down to here, because like all of this is good. Before an ally attacks, if the target has burn type debuffs, like I said, they're always going to have them pretty much, increases damage dealt by 10 all the way up to 20% if you get max dupes. So right there, 1 copy, 10% damage increase for burn type attacks. Then you have our second skill here. If burn damage was dealt, further increases damage by 10%. So you have another 10% there. And then the third one, if the target has overbeat combustion, which with Vector, they're going to have that, increases damage dealt by single target support attacks by 5%, which is all the, like, that's the main damage of the burn team is support attacks. So another 5%. So crazy amount of extra damage being provided to the burn team. If you're not, now it's not necessary. Don't feel like you have to get her weapon. I'm just saying, of all of the limited weapons in the game for all the characters, this is probably one of the best that provides the most value to your team, because her second best is classified manuscript, which is nice, but it just kind of focuses on her own damage, on being able to ignore defense and then be able to move. So significant upgrade on Echoes of Sorrow over classified manuscript, but I would say get her before you pull for her weapon. Her V1 provides way more than her weapon. If you get that and you do want to continue increasing your burn damage, though, Echoes of Sorrow is probably one of the best in the game for that. But yeah, that's pretty much there on the kit here. But yeah, Vector is my, overall, one of my favorite units in terms of the value she provides to a team as a support. Now, I would say Springfield, I value Springfield more and how much she brings to Tololo, but Vector's right up there. I mean, they kind of go hand in hand. I'd say Springfield I like more in terms of that support side of things, but Vector is right next to her on that top meta. I mean, both Vector and Springfield are tier 0, top of the line, best units. I'd say pretty much everybody should pull them. So can't wait for her to come out. It's just kind of a timing thing because I know everybody blew a lot on Klukai and Mishti, so it's going to be hard. But don't worry, if you only can get V0 now, just get V0 now, get V1 on rerun if you really care about that. Don't feel like you have to get it immediately. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you like my content, if you can like, comment, subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.